You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. All right. Welcome back to Public Comment. This is the show where myself, Khary Frazier of Detroit is different, is joined by Malachi Barrett of Bridge Detroit. And we talk about a lot happening in municipal government in the city of Detroit. Malachi, how are you doing today?
I am ready for the election to be over. 1 week left. Thank God.
Yes, it is. Boy, I'm getting like a stack of mail like this from both sides, talking about voting and everything that's happening. And to think that if some of this campaign money could just go into the community, that's just a Khary concept, then
It
a
is such
lot
a
of things would be
waste.
solved.
I always think that too. It's such a waste the amount of money that gets paid to like consultants and billboard companies and software producers for these like texts that you get all hours of the day. It's a lot of money that they spend on these campaigns, millions and millions of dollars. Here's the trick though. They know when you vote, they know when you have casted your ballot. So they're gonna keep uh, hitting you up basically until you go turn that in. As soon as you turn in a ballot, they realize, okay, we don't have to spend money on this guy anymore. We can move on to the next person. But if they know that you got an absentee ballot that was mailed to you but is sitting in your kitchen right now, they are going to be up your stuff for
Yeah.
a while.
Well, I actually casted my ballot yesterday on the boulevard. That's what I've done for a while. Ran into a couple people I knew, and it was actually more people in there. Usually I go in there. I may go earlier, but it was about 9 other people voting in there. So you can go on West Grand Boulevard if you are a Detroit resident anytime, anytime up before the election. So I usually just vote there. I had a problem a couple of years back where I needed to fill out a provisional ballot, just going to my regular polling location. And I said, moving forward, I'm gonna just go to the source itself. I'm gonna go to the Department of Elections to cast my vote. That way I know I'm not dealing with anything in the system that could keep my vote away from being counted. And that was a really important vote that I had a provisional vote for. It was a gubernatorial race, but I was more concerned about a lot of people running for state rep that I cared about. So go to the Department of Elections right there on West Grand Boulevard. You all should know where that's at, across the street from the Fisher building. And that's where I cast my vote. But you, as a Detroit resident, all you need to go in there is with an ID, and they're gonna say, hey, go to the back. And then obviously you got to know what your address is, and then you're gonna get your ballot, you're gonna vote, and you keep it moving. It's a process that I personally think, could take a couple of minutes out your day, and you are voting. So
Here's a quick fun fact. You said there were a lot of people at the polling place yesterday when you went in. Yesterday was actually the biggest day for in-person early voting in Detroit so far. It
mm,
opened on the 19th, I believe. People have been able to go in and cast their ballot at these early voting centers.
wow.
There were 3,163 ballots cast yesterday alone. There's a little over 18,000 that have been cast so far, and that pales in comparison to the absentee ballots that have been turned in, which I think is getting close to like 70,000 now. So
Yeah.
people are voting.
I'm one of that 3,000, what, 63?
Yep,
I'm
163.
3,063 myself, possibly. You know what I'm
Congratulations.
saying? So
Congratulations.
that was me. And a couple other people. I mean, it's usually not that packed, but it was more people in there. There are even like the contesters on the side. You can assume they from the red party because, I just assume that in Detroit's Department of Elections, it's not a lot of white folks that look like they in their 20s that's just, hanging around, you know what I mean? So I assume that's what they were there for, you know. But that is the electoral process, right? So with this, we are off to talking about local politics. Y'all know how much we love the local politics here. Hence, that's what this whole show is about. The connection over time that has Malachi in the space. City council double time. Double time. And boy, oh boy, how do we get here? So Improve the quality of housing and increase landlord compliance ordinance. The city council approved a new ordinance that reforms the rental compliance, lead safety, and tenant escrow regulations. City officials said the changes will improve the quality of housing and increase compliance with city laws. Landlords must obtain a certificate of compliance before the property to become occupied and collect rent. Certificates last 3 years and can be extended. The city has struggled to enforce compliance with blight tickets. Only 10% of rental homes have currently passed required inspections. The ordinance streamlines the inspection process and cuts an annual fee for landlords from $1,000 to $150. The inspection process will focus on 15 key health and safety issues that address home conditions and lead safety. Lead paint inspections are required for properties built before 1978. Dust wipe samples are collected from the bedroom and living room and tested by laboratories. Matt Kreis, general counsel with the Center for Community Progress, said the city's compliance is too complicated and costly for landlords working in good faith, while bad landlords easily evade enforcement. Christ said the city has overly relied on using blight violations to promote compliance. He said, and a new approach is needed for rental regulations. Malachi, what did I just talk about that you just broke down? And I got a couple of 2 cents, but please give some more context about this that just passed.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is there's just not enough rental properties that are complying with the city's rules in the city. So a lot of them avoid inspections. A lot of them do not have a certificate of compliance, which is legally required to rent a property out to folks. And so the city, previously had been using blight violations in its enforcement, fines to try to fix that, and found that it wasn't very effective. They were having a hard time collecting the fees, and the fees themselves were not really pushing. I mean, it was not getting to the root of the problem, which seems to be that the inspection process itself has a lot of red tape, is hard to navigate, is expensive, so on. So, especially for smaller landlords, they are hoping that this is a easier process that encourages them to go through it. And the fines are still there. There's actually some increased fines in enforcement, and one of the notable things is that the city can actually put a lien on a property if the landlord doesn't pay the violation, doesn't pay the blight ticket. So that can lead to the property actually being taken from them. A lien's a pretty serious step up, and actually something that the council discussed quite a bit before they passed this on Tuesday. But yeah, basically the idea is there's a lot of rental properties that are in bad condition, and this is an attempt to get them in compliance with the city's inspection process and try to fix those issues. And I guess I'll bring up too the lead. The lead issue was a major concern for folks. There was some concern that this is, reducing some of the inspection requirements would, expose more people. The city, the mayor's office was pretty adamant that they are following best practices that a lot of other cities use. The Center for Community Progress, I think it was called, put together some recommendations that this whole thing was based on. And they also vouched for the lead procedures. There will be actually an expansion of lead testing across the city. Santiago Romero. So there's a provision in there basically that says like a quarter of the zip codes in the city that have high, elevated levels of lead exposure in children need to be tested. Santiago Romero wants to come back and amend this ordinance so that it would be citywide, 100% of the city tested. So we'll see like what kind of comes from this, but that's kind of the main goal.
Well, I look at a lot of this. I want to combine the next story with this because it really goes into a lot of the housing conditions, not just in the city of Detroit, but throughout America right now when we look at what affordable housing is. So the next thing is you see the good, well, I should just say more so our brother, Fred Durhall. Fred Durhall talking about fast track tax breaks approved. Detroit City Council, and Fred was definitely for this one. The City Council unanimously approved a new ordinance to speed up the process of providing tax incentives to create affordable housing. Instead of paying property taxes, qualifying developers will pay service charges based on rental rates. Developments must be certified with the city and in compliance with rental regulations. A developer must provide affordable housing for up to 15 years. Dozens of developers and representatives of nonprofit organizations voice support of this ordinance. Housing projects in renovated vacant buildings can receive a tax break if rent is affordable for someone earning 120% of the area median income for Metro Detroit. Metro Detroit. That equals $2,160 for a one bedroom unit and $2,592 for a two bedroom unit. Tax discounts are available for housing that offers units that are affordable for people earning 80% or less of the area median income. That equals $1,440 at most for a one bedroom unit and $1,728 for a two bedroom unit. The ordinance defines persons of low income as those earning 80% or less of the area median income, which is $69,120 for a family of three and $53,760 for a single person. Projects that offer rent up to 60% of the area median income can receive an even larger discount. That equals $1,080 at most for a one bedroom unit and $1,296 for a two bedroom unit. Council members said Detroit needs more housing for the lowest income residents who earn 30% of the area median income. That's $20,160 for a single person, $25,920 for a family of three. Activists with Detroiters for Tax Justice expressed concerns that the automatic approval will cut the public out of the process and reduce the council's oversight. They argued that public involvement isn't red tape to cut through. Santiago Romero previously said that council members will be notified within a week of projects being awarded tax breaks. We're not in the dark about who's going to be awarded and what those projects will be like, she said in a previous meeting. So, as I said, I kind of wanted to go into both stories because I think both are interconnected. So, one, the ordinance to heighten the standards for the current landlords right now that are renting to Detroit residents. The second is about fast tracking tax incentives and basically giving money to people to develop new projects for affordable housing. And what I really loved about that story was that story got into a lot of the numbers of what affordable is in the area. So affordable range to at they said like the 30% of the area. So area, Metro Detroit is a big footprint depending upon how you define it. So that's the next thing, which I'm sure you'll probably be able to answer. But basically, from 1,000 to $1,200 for to 2,000 and $2,500, that's a huge window. That's more than double that we're looking at, right? And I do believe that part of that quote unquote 30% of the lower income is probably more commonplace, especially in neighborhoods like mine. And neighborhoods like mine are those neighborhoods where a landlord would be probably not looking for certificates of compliance. I have a two-family flat if people don't know this. And the two-family flat I have, recently in my neighborhood, some other properties were sold by some of the landlords that are over here, and everyone that was looking for a place said, "Hey, you got a two-family flat? Can I come over there?" And you'd be surprised about the rent that they were looking and seeking on paying that could continue from what they were paying. So I'm gonna play a little bit of Price is Right with Malachi. How much do you think that they offer as far as like this is what I was paying? Can I continue to pay here with a flat at your house?
So you're talking rent for what, like a two-bedroom house in this neighborhood?
Two bedroom flat. Yep.
Man, they were probably asking you for like 1700 $1,700.
They were going for like about 750, $800. That's what the market is over here. So
Oh,
that
wow.
definitely shows, like, as far as like the lead compliance and these landlords that we looked at, like, kind of behind the bullet, because now you're looking at, if compliance is costing you $1,000 for the inspection a year, and you're only making, what's that, $9,600 out the year for it, and that's not any of the other maintenance. You're paying that for the inspection, let alone if like a door breaks or if you got to call a plumber or something like
The
that.
inspection fee alone used to be 1,000. That was another part of the thing that we didn't
Yeah,
get to, but they dropped the actual fee that landlords have to pay for the inspection from $1,000
150.
to 150.
And and this is where, like, I think like a lot of the places that the low income it's like, the poor taxes are like, you damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Mhm.
You can rent to a person for less under the guise of like, look, you're gonna kind of have to fix it up. I'll let you stay there for 750. I'll let you stay there for 800. It's a 3 bedroom, but you're gonna have to work on this or work on that, which is definitely outside the scope, which is probably meeting people more at what the means are. And this goes into like the larger discussion in America itself, is inflation or the cost of living or whatever we want to call this, is the prices are going up and people aren't having more money to spend. So since prices are going up and people aren't having more money to spend, what decisions can be made and what barters are going to be made in that exchange to have something like what should take up, as they say, rent should be 30% of what you spend. And I still put mortgage into that bucket too, because even though a mortgage, they say, is owning a home, but it's still kind of, in my mind, owned by the bank. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
that's what I would look. I'm still paying rent to the bank, basically.
Yeah.
We were
So
fortunate enough to buy a house in March, and it still feels like, that could slide out if you don't make your payments. So,
it could be even worse, you know what I'm saying? So, like, it's supposed to be 30%, right? That's how you look at it.
yep. That's basically what the federal government uses as a definition for affordable, is when you're paying, a little bit less than a third of your income on monthly rent, basically housing costs.
Exactly. So, $20,000 to $25,000 a year we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, basically, so this is about, trying to fill the gap basically between, you're talking about how, expensive, you're talking about how it's very difficult for landlords and for property owners and for developers to make enough money to justify building affordable housing,
I
basically, right?
I'm talking about the whole scope from the perspective of the person that's renting,
Mhm.
to probably the more, what I would consider like the landlord that I've known most of my life. That person that owns maybe like 4 or 5 properties in the neighborhood, to now this whole industry of real estate, I think during the pandemic transitioned from something as probably like another revenue stream for a couple of people that are a little bit, that save their pennies or whatever, or in the real estate, to now this is a corporate revenue stream. I'm seeing people come into communities, buying homes, partitioning off spaces, and selling rooms for that 750,
That's interesting.
for that $800, for that 650. So it's like they're turning spaces that were in a city that was such a beautiful housing stock and housing full, where we had so many home owners, to something different now. Like, it's moving into a space where homes are being partitioned. And in these partitions, you're getting met with these lower rent costs. But with those lower rent costs, you're not getting the same amenities, which goes into some of those compliance. And the corporations that can abundantly spend, usually they're not even spending their money. They're spending some leveraged financing, because they've bought so many properties against the properties they own. They're competing in ways that are definitely impacting that the landlord that would be more understanding and of community, because they live there and they may own like 6 properties, and then that seventh person is like, all right, look, I can fix up some stuff. So then it's like, okay, I'm willing to take this home and rehabilitate it, because a lot of the housing stock here, you're probably going to be spending I would say at minimum, if you know what you're doing, you may be spending maybe about $25,000 in rehabilitation. If you're gonna be paying people to do it, at best, maybe 40,000. If you don't really know how to navigate and don't have relationships with people, you're maybe spending $95,000 for renovation. And this is the same problem that the city is running into because we remember that the city program for the porch and roof renovation is having the same problem finding the people that can rehabilitate the housing stock that already exists. Hence, I believe that a lot should be put more into the housing stock that exists because of the materials that these homes were already built with and providing incentives and support for the landlords that are from the community. I'm talking about people that may own 4 or 5 properties instead of these corporate interests that are coming in and saying that affordable rent is $1,400 to $1,700 a month because who the hell is paying $1,700 a month and considering that affordable? Now you can speak, Malachi. Yeah,
Well, I mean, that's
give your 2
why
cents.
yeah, I mean, a couple things. I guess first of all, it's interesting the trend of, we have a lot of larger homes in the city, where I've heard people make the argument that it doesn't really make sense for like a one person or two person household to be, occupying some of these larger. I mean, especially on kind of the east side where I'm at, we're just north of like the villages, so there's still some of those like bigger houses that were built,
Yes.
in the 1920s, basically. And so, yeah, as a solution to that, people have been chopping those up and turning them into like multi-unit
Yeah,
rentals.
partitioning it off.
Mhm. I think there's also, gonna be a pretty big lead contamination issue in a lot of those older homes.
Very much so.
So you wonder as they're getting, divided and split, are those renters, getting the inspection process that they
I
need?
would say I would say hell no, because it's like if your option and you're being presented by the city that affordable is $1,700 a month, and we know how much people are making, like to even present the average person, they're saying low income is $53,000 if you're a single resident. I
Yeah.
don't know that many Detroiters. I'm saying in Detroit. Hence, that's why I don't like a lot of these statistics being put into Metro Detroit to make decisions for Detroit because we're aware of, you know, Bankalay Thompson, who writes so much about this, the poverty that exists in Detroit. And I kind of don't even like the way that poverty is framed just from an American lens because it makes it put shame on the person that's experiencing the condition. Poverty is, as they say, racism is a public health crisis. Poverty is a crisis of our culture, of our society, of the way that we've designed things here in this nation that it takes so many impoverished people as we've seen the billionaire and trillionaire class expand during this time, especially during COVID 19. That's such a classic example of really the ills of our society. Some people would call it capitalism. And I don't even necessarily think it's that because so much money is given to the billionaires and trillionaires that are interacting in these systems. When you could change these systems around and you could actually heighten the quality of life of people as opposed to corporations. That's why the whole concept of fast track tax incentives is so backwards when we need to fast track money to people. All of these tax incentives are getting fast tracked while people are continually hearing, especially in communities like mine, you have no reprieve, no money, no consideration for overassessed tax values that still look like being overassessed in our communities, which connect to all of these challenges. So, yeah, definitely, as they're partitioning off these houses, I mean, you can almost offer a person, you know, a shed and they're going to take it because if the affordable housing option is $1,700 a month, that alone, you know how rent is. You're going to have to pay your security deposit and you got to have moving costs. So basically, you're looking at $5,000 to move. I don't know a lot of people that have $5,000 to move when we're looking at a person in the city of Detroit, especially when you're thinking about a two bedroom. So that if that's a mother and a child, how many mother child combinations have $5,000 to move unless they're going to tap into some type of credit union account to get an extended loan for rent? So now you're using what would have been used to like buy a home options to just find rental property. Hence, I love the fact that our city council is moving forward with this renters commission, and that's so essential and so needed, and that the first ordinance exists. But the second ordinance is so flipped on its head because the affordable housing, I believe, already exists. And it could exist by empowering so many of the landlords that are already engaging in community, by talking to a lot of people that are in these spaces. Because I do think that affordable housing is somewhere closer to $600 to about $1,500 in the city of Detroit a month. Um, which I guess the question I would have for you, and we see these trends and these discussions, you know, now it opens up the coffers of, the people working in administration. What are they making a year? What's their 30% salary? Comparable to a lot of the people, even if we look at like the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center, that's them. The people you go through, the Securitas person, it's like six of them. All right. Do you think that they're making $53,000 a year? What are they making? What are the building engineers inside of the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center making? Like the people making these decisions, what is their financial status to even make a determination of what affordable housing is? Because I just don't see that as a reality when I believe that my community is closer to what most Detroit communities look like, which also calls for a lot of the conditions in compliance of the standard of a lot of the older properties that exist throughout the city of Detroit.
Yeah, I think, I wanted to call attention to some of the affordability things. And I know there's a lot of numbers in there. Every time we do these, we got to make sure we do
Yeah.
our diligence and explain what AMI means for everybody because it's tricky. And this is like the thing with affordable housing developments and some of these things that the city does is it's tough to know exactly like who and what we're talking about here. So they define persons of low income as people making 80% of the area median income, which is about, 70, a little under $70,000 for a family of three and about $54,000 for
And
a single person.
and I have to bring this back up like I always bring it up because median is not a good measurement of that. Because median is basically taking whoever's making the most amount of money
Right.
and the least amount of money and in the middle there. So if Shaquille O'Neal buys a house in my neighborhood, the median income just shot up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your neighborhood too, because that's what median is. It should be mean income, because if it was mean income, we would have a better statistical figure to go by. So my bad. I just always will stand on that.
No, you're good. I mean, and that's kind of the point is that that's defined as low income and it's really not. I mean, when you think of like what low income in Detroit is, that's still, if you're talking about $54,000 for one person, that's still like a good $15,000 more than the median income of a Detroit resident, which is a different thing from this AMI standard that we've been talking about because it includes Wayne County, it includes Livonia, it's the whole metro area. Um, but even so, if this is kind of aimed at filling that gap, the council has repeatedly said that there's a even bigger need for people who are kind of in the lowest of the low rung, and that would be around kind of 30% of the AMI. And that's people who are making like $20,000.
And that just needs to like the statistics of how much is the average, because I think the mean is closer to that. I believe the mean is closer to that when we look at what exists throughout the city of Detroit, especially when the unemployment figures, and this is not those numbers, this is my Walsh College Business School education. Like unemployment rolls are only based on people that are off of a job for at least a year's time. After a year, you're considered a displaced worker. You're not even counted in unemployment. Because it used to blow my mind, and I'd be sitting debating with my economics teachers like, it's way more people unemployed in Detroit than what these figures say. But the thing is, I know so many displaced workers. Like, I literally personally know some people that have not had a job, when I say like gotten a W 2 or work like that, in about 6 years. they're not even counted into the statistics of unemployment. If you combine unemployment and displaced workers together, we would have real statistics of what work looks like in Detroit as well. But that doesn't reflect well on the society in Detroit or America for that region, for that point. It's like we need the real numbers to really make true assessments so that we can deal with the challenges in our communities. And then when we keep saying that, like, look at crime and oh, I can't believe crime is, it's like crime is a response of the lack of opportunity that exists in our society. But we can't even necessarily assess what's going on with the opportunities that exist if we're not looking at the measurements the right way. So
Yeah.
please continue to break that down.
Yeah, I'm just getting at that, this is kind of there was a discussion about workforce housing and that there's a need for people kind of in the middle income range, that there's not enough being built for them right now. And the council and the housing department also talked about people in the greatest need of affordable housing are folks in that 30% AMI, the lowest kind of low income bracket we're talking about. There's about 100 units that are built each year, that are supposed to be affordable for people earning 30% of the area median income. The idea is that some of these tax breaks would free up money that could be used to build more of those homes, but the pilot tax is really not about creating more homes for those folks. It's more about for people kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And the housing director said there's a need for larger bedroom units as well. They're hoping that this will kind of fill some of those voids in the marketplace, but they don't have a tool for middle or moderate income housing units is kind of what they talked about yesterday, which I thought was very interesting because when we're talking about affordable housing, I think there's kind of an assumption that we're talking about, people who can't afford kind of like the normal market stuff. And certainly the workforce in Detroit is making less than what they can get, market rates for. But there's still all these folks that are really at the bottom of this, that there's not many 100 units per year. I mean, for a city our size is probably not enough, as they
No,
acknowledged yesterday.
no,
And even this tool doesn't really, and again, it goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier, that like you're just as a developer, as a landlord, you're just not making enough money. You're basically breaking even. You're not really making any money off of a unit that is that cheap because of Detroit's high property tax rate,
mm-hmm,
because of the construction costs,
mm-hmm,
because of, all of the things that make it more expensive to
yep.
be in the city. So
Hence,
the city's working on tweaking some of these things to kind of, pull the levers and make that math make more sense. But I think it's always just going to be really hard for developers to make, those decisions for the lowest income people. And this is supposed to fill the gap for one part of the market, but we need to watch the other part.
hence, I think that a lot of people that should be in the room are those landlords that have owned properties, multiple dwellings. Like I say, something like, let's say under 10 units, 10 homes, two family flats and stuff like that. They should be in the room. And it's a lot of people like that that have owned homes like that for 20, 25, 30 years, and they can share a whole lot more of the logic behind. That should be the class of people that should be supported when it comes to quote unquote development. But that's not the class of people that's looked at and being supported when it comes to development, especially when affordable housing is just not affordable based on what's in Detroit. I mean, even look at the non-residency laws of the executive administration, right? The executive administration under Mayor Duggan has expanded vastly. It's many people that work for the mayor. And of those people that work for the mayor, a lot of them don't live in the city, right? Which helps with the median income thing, sort of, kind of, because Metro Detroit median income. But at the same time, they're not even in the city. A lot of police officers, they're not in the city. A lot of the teachers, they're not in the city. The highest employers are not people that live in the city. So that's the city of Detroit, that is Detroit Public Schools, and that is Bedrock, Rocket Mortgage, Quicken Loans, what that entity. Those are the highest employers throughout the city of Detroit. And those people aren't living in the city. A lot of the people that live in the city are working a lot of service jobs in the suburbs in the city of Detroit. These are the people that are working at the Panera Breads and things like that. Another story you had was the bus driver story, right? And they said that the average bus driver for DDOT, like right there, that's a city employee making $19 to $26 a month. I mean, an hour, right? Whereas if you drive for Smart, you're making $26 to $32 an hour. So it's hard to compete. So even the way the city's paying, they're paying what they consider the 30% of the area median income. And that's what they're offering as an incentive, because that's now they're getting paid more, right? So a raise from a city worker employee is in a position where they're going to have to be probably in one of those homes that hasn't had the inspection, you know, under the table rental, things like this, right? And I think that those landlords are the people that need to be in the discussion. Those renters are the people that need to be in these discussions. That's the group of people that need to be empowered if we're thinking about really having housing. If we really want to have this discussion, it's some stats that need to be presented where corporations aren't just always given the bonus. But, I wanted to wait for both stories to come together because it's a bigger discussion about everything, as this is turned into a renting city from what was an ownership city. And even that whole issue, shout out to Detroiters for Tax Justice, is something that could have been supported in many ways, but was not. It fell on deaf ears during other strenuous times throughout our city. But this is another. I'm sure we're going to talk a whole lot more about this topic, because affordable housing is going to become more and more and more of a discussion for America. Because if we're going to continue to look at these challenges, and the people solving these challenges have not even been in those positions and are so far away from those positions, it's it's people that have no empathy for that condition. It's people talking, pull up your bootstraps, or find another job, or save your money. I remember one time, and this was so classic, where I was sitting in the crowd and Charles Pugh was like, "Yeah, this is what you got to do." This is when he was the city council. He was like, "You gotta save every other check. You gotta take your check and then put your other check in the bank and just save it." And I'm like, "Who can do that when you're working in impoverished conditions?" But it's that type of thinking. And he was making a lot of decisions about how people would move with home ownership and rental and things like that when he was the president of the city council, and thinking in that way, in that style, that was such a disconnect. But Detroit is different. Detroit is different. Another great public comment. I'm sure more topics about rental, affordable housing, and development will come up. And this is also a challenge because it's our tax money that's funding a lot of this stuff. Malachi, let them know.
bridgedetroit.com. That's where we live. It's a free news resource for you. We are a nonprofit newsroom. Newsletters go out. Ours go out on Wednesday. Shout out to Chase Cantrell. I screwed up today. I don't know if you're probably not listening to this, and we talked about it already, but man, that was dumb. I misidentified him in a photo, and that hurts. Because the guy, yeah, they
love Chase.
They don't look all right. And Chase is, yeah, he's great. He's there advocating for things all the time. Smart dude. Appreciate him. Sorry about that. I will make it up to you somehow.
Yeah. We need to get Chase on here.
Actually, he spoke in favor of the pilot fast track tax breaks. So from the perspective of smaller developers, he was one of the folks who was saying this actually should be pretty helpful in creating more affordable housing for those middle income folks. And that's a nuanced conversation. I mean, maybe we should bring somebody on who can speak more to kind of the different gaps in the market. But anyway, yeah, Bridge Detroit, we're free. We've got good information and a couple of mistakes from time to time up on the website.
Hey, it happens. It happens. It happens. It's all right. Peace. You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different in Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.